Cecilia. I'm a senior product marketing manager at InMobi. Today, we're here to discuss about the future of mobile identity in 2022 and beyond. And in this discussion, I'm joined by Jeremy Huber from InMobi and Davide Rosamilia from ID5. Before we start, I will let them both introduce themselves now.
Davide, do you want to go first?
Oh, sorry, I was letting you go first. Hey everyone, I'm Davide Rosamilia, product director at ID5, and very passionate about identity. I think we can leave it there.
Okay. Hi, Jeremy Huber. I lead our audience intelligence team at InMobi here in North America. So oversee everything from our data initiatives here, our insights that are derived from that data. We have Pulse market research that we also collect a lot of data and do market research here in North America, as well as our audiences for media activation.
Right. Thank you both. Let's dive right into it. So to start this conversation, I think it's important to take a moment to understand the current state of identity and addressability in mobile. Davide, can you shed some light on this topic?
Sure, absolutely. So it's a very changing ecosystem and landscape. I mean, everyone would have heard about the recent or not so recent changes with classic identifiers such as IDFAs becoming less and less available in app, and as well third-party cookies not being available in Safari environment for quite a few years now. This is making more and more difficult for brands to target and reach their audience, and with additional changes such as IP obfuscation, private relay, etc. The road ahead for this identifier is quite uphill. Europe has been particularly challenging as well because in app there's been historically and recently a limited adoption of TCF, and it's difficult to prove consent. And this is making it harder and harder for brands to be able to justify reaching this audience in a legal way to their legal teams, especially for big player. And last but not least, traditional identity solutions, such as certain device graph solutions, have been focused on connecting existing identifier. But with this identifier being less and less available, this is not working as well as it used to be.
Okay. Jeremy, in your role, you work a lot with advertisers. How are advertisers reacting to the changes that Davide just mentioned?
Yeah, I think, first, I think we should level set on a specific area here, which is that both consumers and advertisers want the same thing, right? We want relevant ads. Consumers want to receive relevant ads, and of course, advertisers want to put relevant ads in front of those consumers. And maybe a good example of that is I've recently moved down to Southern California, and a mobile publisher that I see pretty frequently on my phone has made a decision, or their media buyer on their behalf, to present Spanish language first ads to all users within this region. Unfortunately, my Spanish isn't as good as I'd like it to be, so that ad is lost on me, right? So it's a non-relevant ad to me. It's a loss for the advertiser. It's a loss for the consumer. And so again, we all, advertisers, publishers, consumers alike, prefer to have relevant conversations. I think the gap exists in what consumers are willing to share or give up in information or data in exchange for that relevancy. And so that's kind of the big question here, or maybe the challenge that we're all facing in today's landscape in the future. What we're finding is that advertisers and partners like ourselves are really organizing consumers into two groups: the addressable and the non-addressable. Okay, and we have to prepare for both. And advertisers are doing just that. On the addressable side, those costs are going up. It's a smaller group of consumers, and they're targetable, they're addressable, and you know a lot more about them. And so advertisers are paying more for those addressable audiences, and the costs on the non-addressable audiences, because you can still present ads to them, is coming down just a little bit. But again, advertisers are coming to us and us with our publisher partners to still try to have relevant, meaningful conversations with those consumers. Cecilia, on your side, what are you seeing maybe from the publisher side? I know I just gave the advertiser side. Are you seeing similar approaches or?
Yeah, but to piggyback, I think across the board, I think it's clear that there's, reacting to the changes, there's a clear difference how mobile publishers and app developers are reacting to these changes versus web-based publishers. Many mobile-first publishers remained quite unprepared for the changes when ATT got first released. I think there was a wait-and-see approach to assess what the impact would look like after much speculation on the post-IDFA world. But we see some publishers taking proactive steps at the moment to optimize their business, but the adoption of alternative solutions like universal IDs and so forth remaining quite low on the adoption. So what has been interesting to see, though, is the opt-in trends on the user side. We've seen many examples of publishers taking different approaches to the Apple ATT framework prompts. Some were testing the language, some were testing the design, some tested some pre-ATT native prompts, and all of that led to a pretty higher opt-in rates than what the industry originally predicted. So it's been quite a positive story on that end. And at the moment, across the InMobi exchange, we see 40%. So it's quite an interesting journey. But one point is that the privacy changes are definitely pushing publishers to think about the value that they're bringing to the customers in exchange of their data. So that's been quite interesting. So we talked about advertisers and publishers, but what about identity solutions? What will be their role in 2022 and beyond, according to you, Davide?
I think the role of identity solution is kind of defined by what both of you guys said, which is, there is a need on one side of guidance and helping publishers and advertisers to understand how to tackle these changes in the way that is within their control. And also there is a more technical side, if you want, which is to provide a reliable solution that works with privacy, regulatory, and technical changes. So in terms of guiding them is to move them away from the traditional addressability of IDs that are effectively disappearing or becoming less available and move towards more compliant, scalable solution, which are generated by consented data, whether these consented data are proprietary and are effectively defining the publisher data or not. And from an advertiser standpoint as well, is to be able to use this identifier as a reliable source that they can use, and therefore not having to struggle to keep up their audience number because of a new change or the IDFAs are going down, etc., etc. And also to just level set and keep the same level in targeting and measurement across different channels and devices. Mobile app and mobile web have been seen historically as two different channels. Display, completely different channel. There are mobile team, there are display team, and whilst it makes sense to have different team within agencies, a lot of it is also because there has been some technical differences that have led to a specialism, especially for the audience part. So essentially, our role would be to take the burden off publishers and advertisers to keep up with all of these changes and let them focus on what they do best, which is buying and selling media, whilst the identity part is taken care of by a reliable partner such as Adify.
I like what you say about taking the burden off the advertisers and the publishers. And on that, I think, how publishers can navigate the new environment is pretty much down to building closer relationship with their consumer whenever possible through transparency and building trust. It's important to explain the how, the why, the what in simple and clear terms to users, having that conversation. So yeah, having a first-party data strategy will ultimately allow publishers to gather as well different types of signals, because access to email IDs is not applicable to all categories of publishers, but those who have access to that should look to leverage their consented data through alternative identifiers to tap into that omnichannel demand and increase the value of in their inventory. So yeah, a suggestion is definitely working with multiple alternative identifiers to maximize that addressability. There are solutions out there like Unified from InMobi that can help publishers to make that transition by helping them to integrate with multiple ID solutions through one point of integration. So that's definitely one suggestion. And lastly, I think it's important to remember that obviously first-party data is not about email only. So publishers should definitely invest about in alternative options to monetize, such as cohorts or contextual targeting or on-device targeting technology, which essentially is a privacy compliant solutions where the data doesn't leave the device. I think the key here is testing. So definitely testing. Curious to hear your thoughts on this, Jeremy.
Yeah, again, the more that we talk, the more it just confirms how aligned publishers and advertisers are, right? In that what you're saying on a publisher side is true on the advertiser side, which is we're all advertisers, partners on their behalf, publishers, permissibly sourced opted-in data is where the world's heading, right? And publishers are going to be able to get permissibly sourced data on some consumers, not always the same consumers that advertisers are, right? And so what also stays true is we're going to need like a unified ID5 translation layers that can link permissibly sourced data from a publisher side, permissibly sourced data from an advertiser side, to again, link those two together and have those meaningful conversations. What we're seeing is just that, right? On the advertiser side, it's varying degrees, and it varies by vertical. But one thing that's pretty much in common across the board is that advertisers are becoming more invested and more involved in the world of addressability, right? This is something that's been talked about. It's top of mind. How do they react? First-party data acquisition, just like the publishers are doing. A lot of our, especially in the CPG space, building and heavying up their first-party data lakes. We're doing the same as a partner because it allows us to properly serve our advertising partners. So one is collecting that data. In fact, we actually have a solution that we have deployed to assist our advertising partners in their collection of first-party permissibly sourced opted-in data from their consumers. Again, all within that realm of building that first-party data lake. But capturing it is just the first step, right? And then you have to then have that ID graph translation layer. Another thing that we're seeing within advertisers in this new environment is those that have apps are significantly heavy up on app acquisition campaigns, okay? Because that's also a way that they can create that one-to-one conversation channel, right? So the more that they have within their apps, users within their apps, the more that they can have direct communication. Again, that remains to be a space that they're growing. Another thing that we're seeing is clean rooms. Okay, so definitely the advertisers and the publishers and partners are all collecting permissibly sourced first-party data. Again, and it was said just a moment ago, with different identifiers, whether it's email or device ID or what have you, we can share that knowledge on consumers permissibly through and privately through clean rooms, and then deploy ID5 or other solutions for that translation layer for addressability. So again, step one is just trying to, and this is all addressable audiences, build that data, manage it properly, and then deploy partners and solutions to activate. The other thing that I'll mention, and we're seeing more of, and this goes to the more the quote unquote like non-addressable side, and Cecilia, you mentioned contextual. You have to get creative. On the non-addressable side, you have to get creative. Contextual advertising, historically has been, well, somebody's within a specific mobile experience or on a page or reading content, or you're engaging within a specific app. We're taking it in InMobi to different depths, okay? Because ATT opt-out users specifically have said that you can't target me within an app, which is fine. We still have the ability to present them with media, okay? And InMobi ad or others can still be presented to ATT opt-out users within an app, but you can't target them directly. They're non-addressable. A way in which we are empowering our advertising partners to respond to that is we gather, and we've been doing this for months, gathering permissibly sourced data on users of apps. Okay, so we are surveying users of specific apps in the US and asking them questions around demographics and psychographics, what type of shopping you do, what type of products, are you pet owners? We gather the data at the app level at a statistically significant base that we can apply to all users of those apps. And we say, now on the non-addressable side, we gather over-indexing demographics or psychographics and bundle those together as app intelligent audiences to say, if you're looking to get your message in front of say an audience of pet owners, we have the addressable side, which they've told us they own pets, or we have data signals to indicate that, but also we can get them within an app experience, non-addressable, so not directly targetable, but put your ad in front of users using apps that we know over-index on being pet owners. So that's a different twist on contextual. Like when we present this to our partners, they say, oh, it's contextual advertising. Yes, but it's not just that they're using an app, it's that we know users within these apps have specific characteristics for which you're interested in.
Very interesting. So that's the then, the now. And if we look at the future now, if we look forward, what does the road ahead look like from an identifier perspective, Davide?
I mean, I think you guys summed very well all the needs of the industry, right? So the road ahead is very simply to just satisfy the needs, but how to do that? I think it will be a little bit of an hybrid role there. On one side, we would have to provide an identifier that can give peace of mind to everyone. So an identifier that is stable and reliable across different environments. Remove distinction and make it easier to just reach addressable audience regardless of the medium. I touched upon it earlier, but why should we have an in-app audience and a mobile web audience, right? And sure, some publishers might have email, some advertisers might have email, and some of them might match. Chances are it's going to be very difficult to do at scale. So that's where identity solution can effectively help, right? And then, when we come out of the single device and we go across different devices, how do we connect the dots? How do we make sure that a sequential messaging of a brand is sequential across different devices, and not that you get the same message on 5 different interactions from 3 different devices, which is not particularly helpful because you might be at a different stage of the marketing funnel and the conversion. And so once you got this identifier, stable and reliable, getting adopted is a very important part, making sure that it's available to as many users as possible within the ad tech industry, and it's available for the majority of the users, but also is respecting the user privacy, right? So as identity provider, we're a little bit the gateway between advertisers and publisher or passing this consent, right? So for example, ID5, every data that we collect is consented, and we respect the user privacy decisions, right? And we want to honor them. We want our partner to honor them as well, and make sure that in the overall ecosystem, the user choices are taken into consideration appropriately.
Does that resonate with you, Jeremy, on the advertiser side?
Yeah, absolutely, right. Again, just the theme here is obviously that, again, throughout aligned across publishers, advertiser, consumers. The future is what we've been saying, right? Addressable and non-addressable audiences. Addressable audiences are going to be built off first-party permissibly sourced data with transparency, where we are empowering consumers to decide how their data is used. And again, that's a publisher initiative, that's an advertiser initiative, that's a partner initiative. And again, we're all going to continue collecting data and using it in compliant ways. To Davide's point, how we do that and how those translation layers come together is also solvable, right? And that's why, to his point, like an ID5, you need to be able to do it as efficiently as possible. So you need to be able to look across different identifiers and engage in that way. And he's absolutely right. Being able to have the same conversation across different channels is critical. Also from a measurement standpoint, right? I mean, there are ways in which you want to engage in the frequency in which you want to engage with consumers, and you have to have some measurement practices deployed for that as well. So again, collection of data, transparency and empowerment for consumers of that data, segmenting addressable, non-addressable is the future. ID graph solutions are a must, whether you're a publisher, an advertiser, an advertising partner like we are. And again, lastly, we said it earlier, it all stems from that foundation of we're all philosophically aligned, that consumers want to experience relevant conversations and advertisers want to have those with them, and publishers on their behalf want to facilitate. So yeah, again, just all aligned across the board, and creativity is going to be key. And I love your point, Cecilia, about testing. With creativity, you have to test. Nothing's perfect here. And so we're going to have different solutions, get creative and test and see what's working best for consumers and advertisers alike.
I think, yeah, you said something about the imperfect. So I think, yeah, the imperfect about finding the perfect. I think there's a real opportunity for the ad tech ecosystem to build better solutions for mobile, learn and involve publishers on that journey. So privacy restrictions will keep increasing. They're not going anywhere. So the road ahead is pretty clear for publishers and the ad tech ecosystem. It's about finding balance between honoring consumer privacy, scale, and ad revenue. But yeah, innovating and finding privacy compliant solutions that cater for the complexity of mobile. On that note, we are reaching time. I have one word to say, gracias. I don't know if you get what I'm saying. No, I'm sorry, I'm joking. But yeah, thank you very much both for taking part to this discussion about mobile identity. I'll try to practice my Spanish as well in the next few days. And thank you to the audience as well. Wishing you all a great day ahead.